there's this set. So we're starting Junco Sprint 1 planning. Keep in mind that the sprint ends on December 22nd, so we've got a little less than 2 weeks before the break. So whenever you're scoping out the stories, please keep that in mind. And then we'll start by going over each of the sprints. We'll start out with platform 1, the platform 1.
If you refresh, I added a few. I think, if I did it right. If not, you'll have trouble fixing it.
Okay.
Yeah, there we go.
So just the first thing here, there were 4 high priority defects that we deliberately did not allow to block 1.8 release, but we said that they should be given attention as soon as possible so that they can be fixed both on master and 1.8.1 support branch. And so the platform contains those 4 defects right there at the top of the sprint backlog. There will also be a separate bug bounty. David will be posting a blog entry about that for those defects.
So do we need to add another version, 1.8.1?
We probably should add 1.8.1, but just I think for just tracking purposes. Yeah, but probably for now. We can do that afterwards. That's a good idea.
Yeah, we've already had a couple of check-ins to what would become 1.8.
All right, so I just wanted to at least talk about those high-level, so those top-level defects that are there. Ray, so which ones did you
2 at the bottom, run SDC as part of master build, and Ubuntu Snap. I really want to take a look at that and see what's involved to get that to work. Okay, there's a guy at Ubuntu who's like just dying to help me with this. So if you can find us, we'll take advantage of it. Sure. The guy who wrote Snap is all over good.
One item that I put on there, it's not necessarily like critical, but I think it's a major thing because it's been deprecate use of Apache Karaf client for CLI connectivity. And the reason I would like to address that is because there is repeated posts on the mailing list about this issue, and so we need to somehow fix it. So that's the item.
Who's working on that, Thomas?
Right now, I did not assign it to anybody. I refrained from assigning it to myself.
What's wrong with using a Apache Karaf client for CLI?
It is not secure, and it results in using something different that you would be using in production. And it's slower to start because it's Java rather than SSH. And we already have a pattern for using SSH. It's just that if you look at the description on there, there's a couple of steps that which include updating documentation. Anyway, that's, you don't have anybody assigned to that, but we can see if somebody from community wants to pick that up. If not, I'll just leave it as a slump, I guess, for the end.
I don't understand why it's a problem.
It's a problem because people can't connect to ONOS. Because there's 2 different ways to connect to ONOS, using SSH and using Karaf client. And now people have a problem if they don't set up the environment correctly, then they end up using the wrong one, which can't connect. And so it's a question of both documentation as well as simplifying some of the scripts. It's a simplification exercise. It's a problem because it's consuming our bandwidth on a mailing list and causing frustration for the users. What?
I mean, isn't it correct behavior that Karaf client should work with?
Karaf client is there just for convenience. convenient and it's not meant to be used in production whatsoever because it's not secure.
Security SSH into the system on capsule. What? I mean, I usually SSH into a system, then I run trap clock on that.
Make sure I understand.
I guess the idea is that the crowd client I usually use it connecting over the loopback connection, which is secure.
Okay, we can probably take that offline. There's yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I guess
it's causing frustration for the workers, and it,
I don't really understand why this shouldn't work. It seems to me that it should work. But I guess you just want to change the documentation, start changing your proposal.
Right. To avoid frustration, yeah. Anyway, so that's, I guess that's for platform spring, 44 spring points.
Yeah, this one's great.
They should a little hefty for 2 weeks then, but we could deprioritize. It's the CLI one. I just yeah. Okay.
Simon?
Yep. Sure. So very briefly, there's some documentation that I need to catch up with from the previous release. So updating the wiki and so on with information. So that's a couple of my items, and then also there's some preparatory work that we need to do to support the packet optical and the new use case for the protected intent visualization that we want to do in this release. So there's that I'll be working on. And then the other 3 members of the UI brigade, we've at the tail end of last week, we previously discussed and agreed on what we would do for them. So there's Vishwa working on filling out the details view, the details panel on the flow view. And then we have Fan working on designing a new partitions view. I think he's put out a call on the email list there. And then Stephen and I will also be working on the topology, the region-aware topology view. So, yep, that's kind of it.
Okay, thanks, Simon. The 3 points look reasonable considering how many people you guys have.
Yep, thanks.
Virtualization?
Okay, so in this sprint, we will implement the basic managers and the provider services, such as the floater service and packet services. And the end of the sprint, we suppose that we will have a simple demos, such as we implemented some virtual network specific applications, such as Azure, just normal ONOS applications. So that application will use our virtual service, so that is successfully, it will show that this that successfully deliver packets between the virtual hosts. That is the targeting of this sprint plan. But in this sprint, the tickets are a little bit quite many, but actually many of these tasks come from the last sprint, so most of them is already implemented and under review. So we hope we estimate this can be handled by this sprint successfully. Yeah, that is our plan for this sprint.
I first saw the 82 and I was like, wow.
No,
Sorry? That's not the point. Okay.
Because they're in fight, so. Dynamic configuration, Patrick, are you going over these?
Yes. So basically the top priority was the YARN tools, the bottom 4. So you take a look at the Yan tools. Is basically it's modifications in response to this new refactoring changes. So that we also have model object implementations. It's the 5743. I'm just bottom up. Okay, sorry. Yan also just showed from bottom up. The APIs and data stores. Cetera also added the data stores implementations. So the looks like from the Yan running time, and the Yan store service and tools, and the object, the model object. So all these ones, we're thinking it's pretty full for this 2 weeks. Thomas and Brian, you guys and take a look at this Jira ticket. Is meet your views or not? So from my point of view, is basically is the top priorities we need to start the work on.
I had a question about the implementation. I guess the two different implementations for dynamic config store and dynamic config service. It seems like
it's a duplicate.
No, it's not duplicate. It's just was wondering, can we really undertake the work of implementation before the APIs are defined? That's one question. And second question is, do we really think that there are 3 points each? And if you do, then it's great. But I guess I have some reservations about that. So, but my primary concern is, are we going to be able to do implementation before the interfaces are defined?
Cetera. So basically can you answer the questions? No. Okay. So the service APIs, I think the way already defined, right? So for the APIs we provide to all the applications are common. So the data node, and the resource IDs, all these are things we need to implement. So the API is already defined. I don't see any blocks for the implementation of the stores.
Okay. Okay. I mean, I know the store APIs are defined. I just was wondering if there's going to be any impact from the data node APIs. Anyway, but
yeah, the data node APIs, yes. So as we talked in the morning, yes. So that is still has the uncertainties. I'm not sure. Tomorrow we probably can talk more. For time being, I think we can start the implementations. Actually, the Cetera is already started working on the code.
Okay.
The one thing I think I'm not sure is basically regarding those validations. We identified when we walk through the layer 3 VPN service, and those code need the block need modules the code to handle the validations notification, right? So that code seems to be a part of the store, and that interface haven't been decided yet, defined yet. So that is the one of the uncertainties potentially could impact on the store implementation. So we can also talk about this on tomorrow morning's meeting.
Let's leave that for offline for tomorrow.
Okay. Yes, I just realized this. Yep. So that's all for the sprint 1.
Okay. And the other thing I wanted to call out was when I looked at the description for this story, there is a dependency on Ray.
5745?
Yeah.
The toolbox implementation, yeah.
What were we talking about before?
Oh yeah, it wasn't
Bug plugin.
support from Ray is required.
Yeah.
I don't know how you want to handle this, right? Like, either Ray or I probably need to take a look at this. But I mean, do you have the bandwidth to do this?
I mean, if I drop one of the little things, then I can bug you for a couple of days, yeah. But you know, it's deep in the bowels of code that we didn't write, so I'm a little hesitant to put a number on it.
So maybe we can clarify what the support is from Sarah.
We know what it is, right? It's just it needs like a couple more days of work, probably me and or Ray.
I'm gone next week.
I guess it just comes down to prioritization. I mean, they need this to do what they're doing, and I mean, maybe this is large into the dynamics of friggin' umbrella, and I should just pick it up.
We can work on it together if you want. I can push some of the DevOps stuff back.
Push something else, yeah. Push something else.
And do this?
Yeah.
But I mean, one of the points. Well, anyway, whatever. This shouldn't be assigned to him if he needs us to do it. Or we should have a story that defines.
Yes, I agree.
What
I would just assign.
You want to break this down further, you're saying?
Yeah.
I would just assign. Yeah, I would just assign the bug plugin
Right.
to either Ray or Brian, I guess. Since it's under dynamic config umbrella, general config umbrella, and I don't know. Can you do that? Right?
Sure, I can do it.
I'm gonna just do that. Because ultimately it'll still
But
probably.
I guess something needs to go out, right? It's something to do.
Well, so yeah, I mean, I guess the thing.
That, but also drop the story.
So I guess my challenge with this board here, right, is that there's a lot of like work, like implementation type stuff that is said to need to be done. Yet we don't yet have the API for the model objects or the services defined. So I don't understand the point of this, to be honest. Like, I mean, we have implementation and building blocks and some refactoring to get done, but the way that I read these stories, it doesn't say that. So what's going to happen is whatever we're going to do is going to happen in like 44 points for 5 people in 2 weeks. I don't know, right? This whole thing, I don't know. If you look at the history of this particular Scrum over the past 3 sprints, it just stays flat, and there's some like dive bombing towards the end that happens, but I don't know how this story, any of these stories map to any real work that needs to get done, other than potentially the definition at the top. So either we spend a whole bunch of time and try to rework and define these things, or we just rubber stamp
dynamic config, right?
Correct.
Which you and Thomas are part of. So why
Yeah,
wouldn't you and Thomas be 100% in sync with this?
I'm in sync with 2 of those stories and maybe the buffer.
Same here, which is what my comment was.
Okay, so maybe you and Brian can fix it offline and not right to see it, right?
Sure.
But I mean, we shouldn't be sitting here in a sprint planning session saying we don't agree with anything that's in the brigade we're in, right?
I agree with your statement.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, just log in.
Yeah, I know. Okay, let's move on to deployment.
Yeah, so for deployment, I'll ask to the brigade, honestly at the end of last week, so maybe it's a bit too late, but to put things, to pull things from the backlog to the sprint. And we didn't have a great success in the sense that they would feel empty. So I can commit for other people. So what I pulled in are stories that I'm sure I will make happen, or that I know are already happening and are in Gary. So for the northbound stories, so the first 3 and the 5th one, the thing is that are assigned to other people. But I really think at this point it needed more bandwidth on our side instead of the brigade side, in the sense that it's more work of reviews. So I'm wondering if we have the bandwidth for this or not. Because otherwise there's no sense to put stories there, right? I don't want to commit for you guys, so. So also here, since it's normal, sure, Pierre already gave some reviews, but at least I need at least one more person that looks into those and move them forward till the merge.
Sorry. Talking about the top 3 stories?
The top 3 stories plus the 5th one, yeah. So I know a couple of them are have some, I would say, minor comments. So for sure, there's also some little work that needs to be done on the other side, but I have the feeling that as soon as that happens, someone needs to review everything again on this side, right? So, and that someone, usually, again, one is Pierre, but others need to be either Shaw, Brian, or Thomas, I would believe, to have the context, not for the Java code itself, right, but to have context in the intent framework. So, while you decide, I can explain you the others. The other one is enable encapsulation in LTNIT. I'm already at the good point with that one. I have a very minor bug in the BPLS CLI that can be solved, I guess, in 5 minutes, so that's not going to be a problem. Well, 2 bugs, sorry, 10 minutes each, 1 story point each. One is the last one, 5762, and the other one is 5761, both trivial to do. And then I have a strange problem that QA discovered from the latest test in VPLS, which is very weird. And I don't know if it's really related to VPLS itself or to the way we used to distribute the configuration on the nodes. There's still investigation to do on that one. I put 3 story points, but honestly, I'm blind there still. So for now, it's random, but I guess, right? I don't have other ways to assign story points before looking at the story itself. So.
Well, you can time back some activity to get more detail on it, and then create the stories from which.
Well, yeah, sure. Right? I mean, I will update this. Yeah, I can say investigate, but also the investigation could be whatever. It could be that I need to go through the northbound. It could be that is a tiny thing in VPLS.
You're right. That's
so.
Fine. Yeah.
Usually, I put something in the average in the middle, and.
Okay.
So what Phil is saying is to make it deterministic for this sprint. Time box it and then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and if you get more done, great.
Yeah, I got it. Okay.
I'm hearing 2 things. You need reviewers, and there may be new stories added later.
Yeah, for sure reviewers. And I hope to don't have to ask the help of anyone, but can do it on my own, the 5727.
But you'd mentioned the packet optical.
So yeah, packet optical is the 3rd thing. This is one of the things I cannot commit for other people, but finally the guys of Adara, an entire team is available, very committed to work on packet optical. They didn't put the stories yet. I have a general overview of the stories in my mind, but again, I don't want to put stories for them. And plus, at the half of this week, we have a couple of big meetings with Mark that will have to define the stories.
Once he recovers.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. So I didn't put stories for that, even if I know we will work on that as well.
Can we put a story for reviewing this if it's going to be more than a couple hours of your time? Right?
I mean, I think we should. I mean, one of the issues is that on here or maybe that was in the platform stuff that I was collaborating with Pierre on last week. Yeah, I mean, these reviews take time. It takes time to get the context to page the stuff back in and work through the logic and figure out whether or not things can or should be compatible. And I mean, I think Pierre is coming up to speed on a lot of these issues. Yeah. Able to review more code and becoming more comfortable. Yeah. But sometimes it just requires some.
No, I agree. I can put the stories as long as we agree that that's the way to go. Till now, we always use the same stories to include also the review. So in my mind, the review is a task under the story, right? So 8 story points, consider design, implementation, review, merge. indeed a story is closed when the code is reversed, not when it's implemented, right? So if we decide that we need other stories for the reviews,
that's fine, but when we pull up the other view that shows it by person,
yeah,
right, I just want to make sure that
yeah,
Brian
know what
has
he's
a
doing.
reasonable.
Yeah.
Because keep in mind the story has to fit within a sprint.
Yeah.
So if we don't expect it to fit, let's create another story.
Makes sense.
And then the other thing is, how are we tracking the packet optical work? Because I see a lot of work from Utah coming in for intent also. So who's covering the review for this? And how are we tracking that kind of thing?
On the intent framework side, we have a lot to review. We have also Michael's code for
Yeah, by the way.
Yeah, and if it's not in here, it should be.
Yeah, so traditionally where is those stories go?
Well, no, so like for example, last two sprints we created explicitly stories for reviewing, let's say the YMS code or CPN code. So maybe what we ought to do is create a couple of stories for those different buckets.
Okay. So what about, where does the packet optical work come in terms of the sprint? So where's Utah tracking?
I don't know.
Question.
Okay.
We should
I
find out,
yes.
make it visible. Yeah.
Okay. Because I'm seeing a lot of commits that I'm not seeing where the rest of the dependencies get tracked. And then the other thing is, are we tackling releases on a per sprint basis? So there's a bunch of requirements around dynamic config, right? Being able to consume it by Sarah and Mark. So are we looking at per sprint releases, and if so, is dynamic config looking at a point where there's going to be a vertical so that it's consumable by other groups?
I don't know.
Just some thoughts.
Yeah, I don't have an answer for it.
Okay.
Because that all depends on whether we're talking about pre-refactoring or post-refactoring.
I think it'll be post because Mark's assuming he'll have to refactor his code to consume the new APIs. And so I think maybe just a handle on when a vertical would be in place and whether the beta or per sprint releases would be in place for them to consume. So those are the only dependencies I know of.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Well, yeah. So first of all, maybe you have an idea. You have an idea. Should I create a story, and how many story points should I add? Or for other 4 stories? Should I create 1 story per story we have there?
What one story?
For reviews.
No. I wouldn't. I mean, the thing is, we know we have, for example, a couple of sizable reviews that require probably some discussion and some collective attention, right? So it's those specific ones that I think we need to allocate. But we're doing small reviews all the time. Just some of them, if some of them are less controversial and consume far less energy, so we don't need to track those. That's going to happen.
We just say for him and for everyone else, let's track them, right?
We need to track the ones which are at least in the past. That's what we've done. We have a large deficit. A couple of reviews related to some piece of functionality that required some attention to it. So some concentration and potentially some discussion. And so we made sure we provisioned that time because it was non-trivial.
No, I understand.
If there's non-trivial time that we see something, yes, we provision it.
So I'm just looking now for some things to do, action point from here, right? So we have those, pragmatically, we have those 4 stories, right? The 4 non-bound stories. What you want me to do, and whatever there's a story or not, but you have the bandwidth to do it. Because if you tell me not, that in the next 2 weeks we can do it, I just remove them from the sprint, right? It's useless that we talk about that now. Maybe you have higher priorities, and I understand.
mean, to me, I thought the ones that we're talking about discussing the intent work that was done by Michele, yeah, we probably should track that to make sure that it's reviewed.
No, so to add bandwidth and support for meters in the intent framework.
Yeah, this doesn't cover Michele stuff.
This is
No,
not
so
because
that, I mean, I don't know, do you expect it to be?
I will try, right?
This stuff they want to build meter support and the reservation of bandwidth into the intent framework, which is something that has been on your deployments roadmap for some time now, right? So one piece of northbound is meter support and bandwidth reservation orchestrated by the intent framework. One piece is that there's some high priority bug fixes on the platform in the northbound that we've been looking at, and another piece is the protection work that is.
Yeah, but okay, so is it going to require your, let's say, is it going to require your bandwidth?
And then there's the intent domain stuff.
Then there's the intent domain stuff that Michele is bringing.
Yeah,
Exactly. So
there's four different areas, right? And I mean, it's one of these things where someone needs to pay some attention to these people and give them feedback. Whether it's Jordy and Elias or Michele or the crew or Utah and Mark.
So the question is, who's that someone? Is that you?
I mean, it can be me because it falls under the intent framework, but it's probably at least 2 or 3 story points per category.
Then that's why my point was.
So
it's trivial. If not, then we should track it.
Okay. Because it requires some interactions and back and forth, and sometime today, and then feedback.
And that was the whole point that I was trying to say. Yeah. So.
And there's dynamic config, right?
Right. So that's probably approximately 10 to 12 points of northbound code review.
So we just select you look up the highest priority and then just leave it there.
Whatever. If you ask me, I tell you my brigade, but I mean, I don't know in general what's the highest priority, right? Honestly, I don't know if we don't do it within 2 weeks from now. I mean, it's better to have it, but we can work also on it.
So the existing one is Michele's, right? That's an existing review.
Yeah, there are a lot of review.
Not only one.
So we're focusing on enabling ONS in this release, right? So Yuka is going to need it for his ONS demos.
Well,
I
I need
assume
it
you're going
as
to
well
need it
for
for
that,
ONS
for sure.
demos. So we look at domains, we look at the other things. What's the driver for those?
I think the highest priority is the bug that we have.
Well, yeah, I would say as well. The bugs take higher priority, really. Compared to what we would like to add, are the biggest.
Then if we want to add other bugs, yeah.
Yeah, no, I would agree.
I don't know how to.
I would probably agree with that as well. Getting the platform working first is more important than adding new functionality to it.
Yeah, more important to have something is working.
So the intent domain stuff is also potentially something, I don't know whether Utah was planning on, but it is something that he's talked about being able to leverage in the context of domain control. Like having hierarchy of, like you have the metro controller and the data center controllers and being able to make requests that span multiple, having a domain interface rather than having to use flow rules or flow objectives from that global perspective. I don't know how big a priority for him it is though.
It's in protection.
I mean, protection, I think he wants more, but the ability to pass intent
No,
to.
but we're saying the highest priority is going to be fixing those defects,
I guess some of those reviews are going to just set either language or just get opportunistic.
So how many story points are these bugs? And are we saying that they're high priority enough that it's done with alongside your dynamic config work?
Probably 2 or 3 points for the intent bug.
Okay, so I think.
But the thing is that isn't so. It's probably it depends upon whether it's hard to estimate, right? Because we think we have a handle of what the solution is, but we haven't yet gone through testing. So if we're wrong and it's actually something else, then it could be potentially more. So I think we could time box the implementation and review of the solution that we have, which would probably be 2 or 3 points, And then if we realize that doesn't actually solve the problem, then we pick it up again next sprint.
Okay.
And it's something that Pierre and I have worked together on. And so it probably is going to need a little bit of both of our attention. I don't know if it's 2 points each or 3 in 1 or something, but yeah, I mean, it's something we have an approach that we've discussed, and we could potentially just try to implement that approach and get that resolved at this point. If we don't tackle it now, then that patch potentially rots a bit and doesn't get tested, and we pick it up later.
Okay. Sorry, okay though. Then we'll sign up for that. It's time boxed and it goes along dynamic configuration. The second priority is going to be based upon UTA and domain. It really depends on if UTA needs the domain stuff. And it seems like he's focused on the protection stuff right now. So that becomes the next thing if you're free from dynamic config, right? Mark?
Sure. I mean, it doesn't have to be a Brian prioritization meeting. I feel like I'm becoming a focal point
I'm
here.
just trying to make sure that the problem is the dependencies from the other, right? And so from Luca's standpoint, should he just move the other items off?
Yeah,
and we just need to be realistic about it because he doesn't want to be stuck at the end of the sprint saying he couldn't finish his stories, right?
But those 4, by the way, I put them into the sprint because are in progress. So I just left them in the sprint because it's something that was already in the sprint before. Just work on that, the code is there, right? So there was no reason for me to remove them from the sprint.
Okay.
But I don't know.
So they'll stay in, they're opportunistic, but chances are not going to happen.
At least I have the right expectations now, right?
Yeah.
We know.
Okay. And then you guys will have other stories. I think that's it. And then Thomas, did you want to re-review the dynamic config?
Yeah, I just moved some of the definition ones to the top. So to me, I mean, I'm with Brian. To me, we're still at the point where we're talking about definitions. And so, Patrick, are you there? Patrick? So you're there, Patrick, and you can hear me. I moved the definitions and basically to talk about and trying to finalize the design activities that are related to the top, and move the implementations down to the bottom. If Sitara feels or others feel like they can get implementations done, that's fine. But to me, that work should not be tracked away from trying to get convergence on the design, which means that design the process and the data, which includes the data node APIs and the model object definition. Those are three related activities. Make sure the end runtime is finalized. The task is not, although it's been started, it has not been finished. And then only then we can start worrying about some of the implementations.
Thomas, hello? Yeah, earlier nobody could hear me, I guess. So the point is that I'm trying to get a basic store implementation in place and have the node addition deletion without calling the data node utilities itself. The task is not going to be complete. So whatever I'm doing, I had a placeholder for that. If you think it is appropriate, we can have it there.
Well, that's fine. That's fine if you do that, of course, but I just want to make sure that it doesn't take away from the definition exercises.
Yeah, so whatever time I have, so I would be spending on getting the basic implementation available and while participating in the model object discussions. So that was the. Yeah.
That's all. Okay. Thanks.
Okay.
I think that's all. Anything else? Okay.
So should we can start the sprints after the meeting, right? Or now?
You want to have the story and the review before we start?
Sure.
Well, the burn down chart kind of sucks.
That's what we
It'll
do.
be the same as always.
Make that burnout chart. It's our primary
Doesn't mean it has to be
goal.
the same. For example, we expect Luca's burn down chart to look happy with the new stories coming in.
Yeah.
Luca looks
that Lucas' fault? It's other people. Okay, thanks everyone. I'm going to stop the recording.
This might see what he